When does Shrek enter the public domain? I'm just trying to mentally prepare for that abomination. Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey is a brand new 2023 horror slasher directed by Rhys Frake Waterfield, and I love the public domain because of this. Okay, so if anybody doesn't know, Winnie the Pooh, the original character, not the Disney-owned version, but the original character created by A.A. Milne, entered public domain a couple years ago. So as soon as that happened, they announced that there was going to be a Winnie the Pooh horror movie. So when I heard that, I thought, why? But then a little bit of stuff started picking up. I'm like, okay, I guess we're doing this. And the idea of a Winnie the Pooh horror movie just kept intriguing me. So this was just going to be a one night Fathom event in very limited theaters, but it eventually went wider. My theater got it. They were only going to have it for 2 nights, but they ended up keeping it for a week. So I saw it on Saturday. And so here I am talking about it. So here's my review for Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. Starting off with the good. Let's get into it. Yeah, there's actually a few things I like in this movie. First of all, I actually really like the physical portrayals of Pooh and Piglet in this movie. Um, I just thought that the people they had playing Pooh and Piglet were actually really interesting. They did a really good job. They were really menacing in some parts. And there are actually some really good kills in this movie. I'll get a little bit more onto the whole thing with the kills later. And there's actually some really interesting ideas put forward in this movie. Like Winnie the Pooh has this superpower where he can control a swarm of bees, like Candyman or whatever, and have the bees attack someone. That's an actually really interesting thing that they didn't really explore, maybe in the sequel, because there is a sequel coming out. And the premise of this movie is an interesting one, where back in 2018, Disney put out the movie Christopher Robin about Christopher Robin having to leave the Hundred Acre Woods and forgetting about Pooh and the gang, and eventually coming back as an adult and learning what it's like to be a kid again, and the gang welcoming him back. This is the exact opposite of that. Christopher Robin has to leave to go off to school, and then the gang goes crazy and eats Eeyore and become evil. That's the story of this movie. And it's an interesting premise, but I'll get a little bit more on the premise later. And there's this really, really cool opening that's animated in the styles of the classic drawings, and that really set the tone for the movie. However, it doesn't really follow up as good in this movie as the opening was. But that's aside my point. It's an interesting premise, and the score, while wholly unoriginal, is pretty enjoyable. And I just have to say, there's one part in this movie that blatantly rips off the mob assault and slaughter scene from Halloween Kills. If you see the movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But yeah, that's about all for the good. Let's go ahead on to the bad. There's a lot of things wrong with this movie. First of all, the acting is atrocious. I don't know what I was expecting from a low budget slasher, but the acting is as bad as the Wrong Turn sequels. That's how bad the acting is in this movie. No hate to the actors as people, but their performances just did nothing for me. Not even the portrayal of Christopher Robin in this movie did anything for me. And like I said, aside from the physical portrayals of Pooh and Piglet, I just had nothing for the acting in this movie. And then you have the premise, which was an interesting one, but somewhere around the middle of the movie, it just goes a little too generic into the slasher zone. It feels like a straight to DVD Wrong Turn sequel, really. I still rather watch this over any of the Wrong Turn movies, period, but that's aside my point. And then you have with the kills, like I said, yes, there are plenty of good kills in this movie. Um, but I was kind of underwhelmed with how the blood was obviously CGI in this movie. Like, every time somebody gets killed, it's CGI gore. And I was kind of disappointed in that because with a low budget slasher movie, they can actually make some pretty impressive practical effects, but they decided to forgo that and just make it all CGI, which I was not a fan of. And then my biggest issue with this movie is for a Winnie the Pooh horror movie, which could have taken anything from the classic literature and gone with it, put a dark twist on it. They play it too seriously. For a Winnie the Pooh horror movie, it should be a comedy, really, or have some amusing parts since, this is a children's property being turned into a dark slasher. I just feel like they played it way too straight-faced. They played it way too seriously. If you're going to take a children's concept and give it a dark twist, go the Violent Night road. Go all out. Make it silly. Make it goofy, but also make it entertaining. But that's about all for the bad. On the final thoughts, I did not hate Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey as much as everybody else did, but it could have been way better. I'm still a little hopeful for the sequel. We'll see what happens there, but Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey is bad, but it's enjoyable, and I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. So that was my review for Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey. I still can't believe this movie exists, but that's why the free market exists. Either way, what did you think about this movie? Let me know down in the comments what you thought about it. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you all next time.